Hello YouTubers, this is Phil, and so what I'm going to discuss today is my Dodge Ram fuel pump, grounds that you need to check, sorry about the shadow there, and the self-diagnostics on board with this truck, how to. It's been a very good vehicle, 2001 Dodge Ram 3500 with the Cummins 5.9. This is the new fuel pump, you can see it in there. These are really deceptive if you don't have experience with them. You think you push these down, these little tabs, but when you push them down, there's still this little point right here that grabs on what I'm pointing at. Right there, that little rim. See that little rim? That keeps this. So I actually had to put a screwdriver down through here, through the bottom. And then there's another one on the bottom side, so you've got to be careful. You want to use a small screwdriver and a small screwdriver, top and bottom. That's what worked for me, and these slide right off. If they don't slide right off, then you don't have this catch right here cleared on both of these. I actually used a pair of vice grips to turn this piece right here like this. I can't do it with my hand, so that I could get in here at a better angle. Just be careful, you don't want to damage it. Some people lower the tanks to do this, and that's a choice. I decided not to do that. I actually, since this is a flatbed, I cut these blocks out of the bed. They were in here. I cut them out. I did an XY coordinate off the cab under the truck to the center of the tank from the ground underneath, and I approximated the center to the bottom of the cab, and then from the side of the truck, the flatbed, over to the center. And I hit this pretty good. As you see, I have really good access. This guy, once you unplug this and disconnect these, it pretty much slides right out. My experience. And then when I pulled the old pump out, this is what it looked like. Sorry about the shading. The sun's at a weird angle. This is why my fuel gauge did not work. Is the little float that belongs on this end came off. And the other thing this truck was doing is it was stalling out. And then I'd run the system, it'd get air in it or run dry. I don't know what it was doing. But something I looked at when I pulled this pump out, is you look at that screen here. That screen is supposed to be white. So the fuel is probably restricted. Truck's pushing about 137,000 miles. And you really should have replaced the pump if you're anything near that, maybe even sooner. Why wait till it breaks and be on the side of the road? It's called preventive maintenance, which is ideal. So I'm going to come down and around, and I'm going to go this way. All right, so I'm coming around, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go under the hood here. So when I had a no start condition, I had to check all my grounds. There's a ground right here. There's another couple of grounds. There's one right there, if you can see it. There's one down. Can you see it? It's underneath that cable. But anyhow, it's right there, straight down. There's another one down here. I'm not going to go to it necessarily. You're going to have to trace. And then there's more grounds. There's another ground right here. There's another ground on the other side. My research says there's another set of grounds that goes across the alternator. I took this apart. I didn't see anything wrong with that. There's another ground right there on the firewall that goes over to the engine control. So I was getting a code that said PCM, not communicating with ECM. Well, when you crank the battery and crank the battery and crank the truck, trying to start the truck, sometimes the battery voltage gets low and it can throw codes. That was my experience. It stalled out twice. I had to have it towed. And then the other thing you can do, you're supposed to loosen this banjo bolt way down there, and just loosely, not too far, just so the fuel comes out. Put a bucket underneath, test for fuel there. My understanding, that's supposed to have 12 to 13 pounds. The other thing you want to do, once you know you have fuel here, you can pull the back of the plug off, the back of the VP44. And there's some pins, pin 6 and pin 7. Go online, figure out which one is positive, which one is negative. The truck's supposed to start with just the hot to the proper pin. It won't rev, but it'll idle. It'll just idle. And then there's also a breakout box you can get. I didn't bother with that necessarily because I didn't get that far. Then I also learned that you're supposed to open injectors 1, 3, and 4. You open these to get the fuel, to get the air out of the pump. And someone else found on YouTube that there's this ground He, he bought a used truck. He couldn't get it to run, and it wouldn't run. He bought it broken, and then he hooked this ground up. And I couldn't find this wire when I first looked at it because it was tucked behind other wires. I haven't hooked it to anything. The truck was purchased brand new, and this wire appears to have never been connected to anything. But if you have a no start, this other YouTuber was able to actually ground this to the battery, and his started. So I can't tell you whether to do that or not, but it looks like a ground to me. Okay, so the other thing you want to make sure is you have 2 good batteries. If your batteries are weak, it could be causing a problem. It takes a little bit to turn this monster over. So now I'm coming inside. I'm going to get my key out here, and I'm going to show you this self-diagnostic that this truck does. And excuse the camera shake. I hope I'm not going too fast. It's a tendency. Sometimes I watch videos and I think they need to slow down, so I need to slow down. So what you do is you put the key in the ignition. Do not turn it. A little tricky for me right now because I'm trying to hold this camera and do this. So I'm going to put the phone right here in the steering wheel. It's a little sideways, so forgive me just for a moment till I get this going. So what you do is you push this button down and you turn the key on. Hold the button. Hold the button down. It's going to say check. Okay, now you let the button up. It's going to go through a series of tests here. This is the onboard computer doing this stuff all by itself, which is pretty amazing. Get the glare off of it. Okay, so it does this little dance. It's doing its dance. It's doing its... I didn't know this truck did this. I've had this truck for 20 years. Okay, it's saying checking the cruise. Now it's gonna... It has no codes. But watch the gauges now. The gauges should go up. Okay, the gauges are moving. It raises them a little bit. Then it'll raise them a little more. Okay, it's testing everything out. It's going to drop them back down. Oh, no, there it raised them more. Okay, that's showing that they all work. This is really interesting. Now, when you hear that chime, to my knowledge, that's the end of the test. And if you don't get a code, then you don't have any codes. But like I said, I would crank this thing, trying to get it to run, And I think I ran the batteries low, and it put phantom codes in there. And the first time of recent that it had the codes, I drove the truck about a mile, and it cleared all the codes out. But like I say, I believe it was a fuel delivery issue. And you got to keep that VP44 in fuel. It's vital on these trucks. So the next thing I'm going to upgrade on my truck is I'm going to get at minimum a fuel pressure gauge. So I always know that VP44 is not being starved. Anyhow, that's it. I hope this is helpful to you, especially swapping out the fuel pump. You know, there are guys that try to do it from underneath the truck, and there are guys that actually tilt the beds on their fleet sides to get to that pump. And I understand why they tilt the bed versus dropping the tank, because I didn't know how those plugs came off the top of the fuel pump, and I never would have got them from under the truck. It just would have been, it just wouldn't have worked unless because you have to disconnect those to get the tank down to change the pump. I mean, logically speaking. And I found I wasn't in agreement with doing the pump from the top with the tank mounted to the truck, but I definitely understand that now. That's my experience. Yours may be different. Never telling anybody what to do, but this is my experience. Hope it's helpful. This is Phil signing out. So until the next one, that's it. And I hope you're all doing well out there. Hang tight.